I was not going to be small anymore. And wherever that courage came from, that moment, it was very powerful for me, and it ignited something. And you know, the next day, I probably didn't feel as powerful, to be honest, but it took a while, but it started something. It was there, it was within me that I knew. It was the first real look at myself.
Yeah.
That this can't be it. This isn't what I was born to be doing. This isn't why God put me on this planet, to be small, to just live in survival. It couldn't be it. And that's where it started, literally. That's where I recognized that there was more, that I had more, that it was within me to do it, and I was the only one that was going to be able to get myself out.
Welcome to Design for More, the podcast where we unlock the secrets to healing, empowerment, and transformation. I'm your host, Angie. Today we have a special guest who's going to take us on a journey of growth, insight, and inspiration. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that follow button on Spotify, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow along on your socials. You won't want to miss this transformative conversation that we have lined up today. Okay, let's get started. Today I have Mandy here, who is an amazing woman. Welcome to Design for More. I am super excited to have you here.
Thank you, Angie. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you.
A little bit nervous, but
it's okay. So I just met Mandy last year, and I am truly amazed by this woman, her journey, and the message she has to share for our audience. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Mandy. How did you get to this point in your life? Go into as much detail as you want.
Well, you know, it's a question that I probably wouldn't have been able to answer before the last few years, because I don't think I know. I guess to explain who I think I am, I guess it comes down to the empowerment, because empowerment to me is literally being able to stand in a room, to walk outside, to see myself, you know, all the flaws, all the good, all the beauty, all the ugly, everything put together. Empowerment to me is being able to go on this journey to find myself again, to not have the voices creeping in that you should be small, that you should be silent. It's being loud, being free. That's really what this journey has been all about. And some days, as you can see, it's still very raw, you know, even after 3 years of being on my own now and trying to figure it out. You think you've come so far, but it's just a journey, and that's part of the thing of trusting in yourself to know, stay on the journey, that you're making progress. That really is what empowerment is for me. Just being free to be myself. Whatever that may be, I don't even know who that person is yet, to be honest. It's a blank slate. And creating whoever that. I want to be. Nobody judging me for it. Nobody controlling me to be something I'm not. And unlearning who I became as a product of somebody else's influence. That's really where I am 3 years later. I'm still learning.
Amazing. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. A lot of the things you mentioned are things that I personally went through, but also things that a lot of my clients are experiencing in this moment, right? Because as a life coach, that's what I really guide women to deal with, is what you've been through. And you know, what you mentioned, healing is a journey. Like, it's not going to be like, okay, it's a destination. It's I'm there. No, you're going to do this for like a long time. But I think it's so courageous of you to actually be aware and create that change for yourself in life now. Like, what you've done and the fact that you chose yourself is huge. So you should be proud of yourself. Yeah.
For the most part, I am.
Yeah. So
But it
let's
feels really weird to even say that to yourself. I am proud of you. I am proud of you. Like, I've really got to practice that in front of a mirror. I am proud of you.
And you should give yourself compassion and grace every single day, because no one else is going to do that for you. You have to pour that love into yourself, right? So here's a question for you. What moment was it? And there might have been a lot, but what in the last 3 years was the moment where you felt a shift, where you're like, hey, I'm going to be okay?
It was actually after one of the worst nights of my life. I was raped by my husband. Just saying that out loud. How do you get raped by your husband? But it happens. And it came to me after it had happened and he had walked out of the room. And I had to pull myself up. I went into the other bathroom to wash all that violence off. And I was looking in the mirror and I was just so disgusted with myself, going, wow, how do you get here? And playing small wasn't going to get me out of it. And it was looking in the mirror and going, holy shit, Mandy, you are so much better than this, and you deserve so much more than this. And I walked back into that room and I looked around my surroundings and he came back, and you're just looking at him and thinking, how does this not affect you? And realizing that this person is not going to protect you, and the only person that is going to protect you is you. And it just started off as a small feeling in the gut, and it just started getting larger and larger and larger inside of me. And such a hard feeling to explain, because I could just feel it just running through my body, this rage, this anger. And I just looked at him and he crawled back into bed, and I walked around to the other side of the bed and I just took everything on the night table and I just started screaming, and everything that was bottled up just started coming out, and I just took everything off that night table and I just right at him.
Yeah.
I didn't care if he got hit in the head. There was just no controlling me in that moment. It was just, if someone were to have seen me, I probably look like a witch. The power that was coming out of me in that moment, in my voice, the strength in my voice, the craziness in my voice, it was very foreign to me. And at the end of it all, I literally crawled back into that bed. It was like being defiant. It was like being rebelling. Like, you're not kicking me out of my home. You're not going to kick me out of my space. I deserve to be here. I have a right to be here. Fuck you. Pardon my language. I don't even know if you're allowed to swear here, but I was not going to be small anymore. And wherever that courage came from, that moment, it was very powerful for me, and it ignited something. And the next day, I probably didn't feel as powerful, to be honest, but it took a while, but it started something. It was there. It was within me that I knew. It was the first real look at myself.
Yeah.
That this can't be it. This isn't what I was born to be doing. This isn't why God put me on this planet, to be small, to just live in survival. It couldn't be it. And that's where it started, literally. That's where I recognized that there was more that I had more, that it was within me to do it, and I was the only one that was going to be able to get myself out.
And Mandy, I love that you shared you were awoke, right? That is huge. That rage you were feeling on the inside, we all have it. It's about awakening it, right? So you were able to do it. And I think that was, like you said, that was part of the shift, or maybe it was the shift, right? But that really woke something in you where you're like, I'm better than this. I deserve better than this. I am a valuable, worthy individual, and like you said, I'm not playing small anymore. And I'm so proud of you to get to this point and to be able to recognize how much courage you have. Here's a question for you. Us both being South Asian, what would you say is the biggest barrier for us, for women like us, for women who get married in their 20s, who don't have the proper support, and then they get put in these situations such as, unhealthy marriages or relationships? What would your advice be to that woman? Think back to your 20s. What would you have needed at that point? What kind of guidance, what support?
The sad thing is other women, the elder generation. I'm such a strong believer, and I hold women to such a higher standard. And when I see that the women that we're supposed to be looking up to are, for the most part, non-existent, and then I do have to take it with some sense of compassion, because they didn't know any better. They weren't given the skill set to understand that the power that they had, because they were told the same thing, to play small, and that's what they did. They never learned to be anything other than that. The only thing that I can say is having daughters yourselves is learning through your daughters and recognizing that some things are not okay and supporting your daughters, and then you start seeing a shift in it yourself. But the thing that I have the hardest time with is that women had a responsibility to their boys, and I don't think those responsibilities were met, because that's, to me, in relationships, I would say 9 times out of 10 in my relationship anyways, it was the lack of support as a woman from the other woman in that house. It was always shifted around to be the blame was on me. It was, I couldn't cook. My mom didn't teach me to cook or to clean. Like, why did my mother not teach me those responsibilities? I was dumbfounded when my own mother was brought into it. Like, how does another woman do that to another woman? And to sit there in a living room being lectured, to give you some backstory on it, I was cheated on so many times, I've lost count. And every time I would take a stand and raise my voice, I was belittled, because, well, that means I'm doing something wrong in the bedroom if my husband's going out somewhere else. That was the advice I was getting from the elder generation inside my house. And I should learn. Like, do you got a manual for me what to do in the bedroom, Mom? Like, what? It's stupid. My father-in-law, God rest his soul, he learned a lot, and I will say that he actually became one of my favorite people in the end of it all. But God, was that a learning experience in itself to get to that point? I never got there with my mother-in-law. But sat me down to say, he would have all these quotes. He was a avid reader in so many things, and he'd have all these quotes. Do you know what a lagom is? And that's a rein you put on a horse's mouth, because that's how you have to treat men. You need to learn how to put a rein on him. Another time, my mother-in-law literally said to me, well, you're the one with the key to the house. That other woman's not going to come into your house if you don't let her. It just all these things, instead of calling him out, going, what are you doing? You're a grown man. You have a family. You have a child. Like, what are you doing? Never. Not a single conversation. It was always, it's my job to keep him from cheating. My job to do this. My job to do that. It was never his job to take care of it. Then it was like, well, you're getting old. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go from here? There is never any support. And I think our culture is to blame for it.
Yep.
For women, for the high divorce rate you're seeing today, because there was never any skill set passed down. There was never any real hard conversations had with your boys. Who teaches boys the difference between right or wrong? They don't know. No one's ever told them. They're entitled. They can go do whatever you want. Oh, God's gift. But women, on the other hand, you're taught to shut up, take it, and protect your household. And this family name is your responsibility, not his. That, to me, is the biggest thing. That false sense of narrative is something is that mind you, women today are much smarter. The girls of today are much smarter. They are much more confident, and it's wonderful to see. And I get such this feeling inside when I see women today, because they are so much different, this generation. But at the same time, you want to make sure that they don't get broken inside their households, because that older generation, it can be pretty powerful. That to me really is the biggest thing, is women of our culture, I would say, are probably the biggest problem makers.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I hear that pain in your voice, and I'm thinking back, some of the things you mentioned just took me back to moments of my marriage where, I for years complained, cried, screamed, fought with my ex-mother-in-law, and her response would always be like, she basically pushed things under the rug, but the whole being small projection, well, why can't you do this? And I had the same conversation where they said, well, you don't cook good enough. You don't make the food our son likes. And at one point she said to me, well, you chose him. She goes, so deal with it. Like, basically there was no support, right? But it's basically, like you said, it's pointing fingers. So yes, I did not choose this version of this man. I chose someone else, right? And this is how things have transpired. But where are you as a woman, as you said, to support me? And so, when you mentioned that, it just took me right back there, because it's like, yeah, you're right. And yes, women are a lot smarter, more independent, more courageous now. But I do know there's still some women who are probably struggling in unhealthy relationships. So for that woman who might be out there listening today, what would you say? What are your red flags?
My red flags is, one, I would strongly recommend, and this, I'll probably get some heat for it, but you shouldn't be living with your in-laws. And that should be a conversation that should be had well before you get married. All those kinds of conversations should be had well before you get married. What are your expectations to your family? I know that's a tough one. I have a boy myself, my nephew, his wife, I've got a niece. They're all, of that age. And those are some hard conversations to have, because our generation was brought up with that nuclear family, that you were going to be, the parents just come with you, and it's your job. But I really feel that was one of the biggest detriments. Today's kids, they need to speak up. And I'm going to say that the women need to speak up and know what it is. What is it in your significant other's mind? What are his expectations when it comes to family? Because you really do have to have some sense of boundaries.
Yep.
And if you don't have a clear picture of what that looks like before you go into that relationship, then those are just problems that are going to come up, and it just makes life more difficult.
Yeah. And what about values, right? Like, you have to align in values. So you don't have to be a replica of your partner, but if you guys don't have similar values, things are not going to work out, because you're constantly going to be out of alignment, right? And again, that's not something that's taught to a young woman before she gets married. I don't think it is. I mean, it definitely wasn't.
They're not conversations anyone would think to have.
No.
It's one big happy family, one big happy family. And you're just not prepared, because I got married thinking I was going to have one big happy family. Honestly, that was always my dream, my vision. It was going to be full of brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws and cousins, and my son was going to grow up with all this, but it's down to a very nuclear knit.
Yeah.
It's not what I envisioned when I got married 30 years ago at all. And there is that difference of values. What's important to me wasn't important to him. It wasn't important to them. We had different lines in the sand.
Yeah.
And if I had been, you know, back then when I did get married, it was obviously a very different time. You didn't get this big, huge, open dating, courting, all that stuff either, and the time to actually get to know each other, the time to actually have those kind of in-depth conversations with your partner. So basically, you really are, even though it was, chosen and it was what they called a love marriage back then, was it really? At the end, it was no different than being an arranged marriage, because what did you really know about one another? What did you really know about what you were walking into? Until you start living with someone, you don't really get to know someone.
Yeah. And that's a great point they brought up. Like, yeah, you can call it a love marriage, but you're right. If you haven't lived with that man, maybe you guys knew each other for 6 months, 3 months, 9 months, but it's not really getting to know one another. No. And you're not getting to know what they're like on a day to day. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know you and I in the past when we've talked, you mentioned you grew up in Boston Borough. You went there when you were very young, small town girl. And I can resonate because I grew up in Lillooet, which was the next town over, right? There's Boston Borough in Lillooet. But what was the old Mandy like? So if I knew you in high school, what were you like?
Very quiet, very reserved, very into my books, very study. It was, my parents I was the first child going to school here, that kind of, that dream of parents have, educating their kids and all that. And that was my focus. My mom was always the biggest supporter of me. Padilla, padilla, padilla. My dad would be like, you should give her some real life set, learn to cook, learn. And she's like, even to this day, I will honest to God tell you, I couldn't make a roti if you asked me to. I've never had to. And the old Mandy, she was curious. She always wanted to learn new things. She had big dreams, big visions. Sheltered. I will say I was sheltered, and I look back now and think of how things would have been different if my parents hadn't been so strict, because I probably would have had a lot more life skills. And when I say life skills, I don't mean like I would have been more discerning in my choices.
Yeah.
Than finding someone and thinking naively enough that that's what love looked like.
And I think the other thing we do is we look for happiness in others. And I feel like in the South Asian culture, it's ingrained in us and taught to us that marriage is going to fulfill you. And that's not the case, right? That could be partly true, but if you don't have that fulfillment and happiness and love within yourself, how are you going to go out and, you're not going out to find it. We have to feel that way. You have to feel valuable. You have to feel that and believe that you're worthy and that you're a priority. And then you will attract that right person into your life. But what we're taught is, go out there. Once you get married, everything will be fine. And that's far from the truth, right? You can't look for somebody else to fulfill you. That's
exactly it. My son is in his late 20s, and I get from my parents, well, isn't he going to find someone, settle down? I'm like, no, don't you dare go down that road with him. He will know when it comes. And that's the biggest advice that I could give him, is that you are not going to know what love looks like until you know how to love yourself. And he will, he's struggling himself. I mean, what kid doesn't struggle through when their parents are not together anymore? And especially when it comes out of a violent nature, it's in them. So, he needs to know what real love does look like, and he's not going to know that until he knows what it looks like to love himself first.
Yeah.
And be confident in that. And I'm such a strong believer in that. You can't settle for someone.
And I love that you're able to now share that with him and teach it to him, right? So
that's what it goes back to, is like, I wish mothers in that older generation, and and I don't want to lump all the men either into all that, but it's such an important, learning lesson. They talk about women and girls that they need to be taught to cook and clean and all that. Well, what are the life lessons that are taught to boys?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a
I just,
generational, almost like a curse that we have to end. And I think that starts from awareness and education, which is what you're doing. Like you're saying, like, I'm teaching my son to love himself. And that's the next generation. And that is the most probably valuable thing you can teach your child, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
my parents, they laugh, we're just teasing them, we're just teasing them. And they're getting it. They're slowly getting it. And they have changed a lot. Probably not as much with us as with the grandkids and the grandkids as they're growing. And I've seen my parents' outlook on life
Yeah.
changing and adapting and growing. And that's what I wish that I would see more in the elder generation,
Mm.
learn and adapt. And that's how those generational embedment inside ourselves are going to change for the better,
Yeah.
if
I
that even
agree.
made sense what I just said.
Oh, it does. So tell me, Mandy, a little bit about your self-care routine now. You've been through a lot, almost 3 decades of, trauma, turmoil, sadness, depression, probably different things that we go through as women when we're in unhealthy relationships. For the last 3 years, you've been working on yourself. It sounds like you're kind of building a life for yourself, rewriting your life story. What helps you now?
Well, it's taken a while to get to this point. When I first left the house, I packed a few of my possessions and I naturally went to my parents' house. That's your first instinct. You go to your parents' house. And I had maybe lasted there for about 2, 3 months because I'm like, no, this isn't going to help me get better. No offense to my parents, but they tend to want to cocoon you. And I would have just fallen into that pattern where your mom's cooking for you every single day and she's hovering and, that suffocating kind of love that usually comes with it. Um, my biggest step was moving out. I'm in my 50s and actually living on your own. Oh my gosh, what a
I love
learning
that.
curve that is in itself. It's so beautiful. It's so scary. It's liberating. It was, my first apartment was on the ground floor. How many fears I overcame with walking in that door every day. And every day that I would walk in, I would feel a greater sense of relief and less fear. And
Yeah.
by the end of it, after I'd been there for about a year, it was home. I just coming in and being by myself, shutting the door and silence, isolation. It's, I think, one of the biggest things you need for yourself to really be able to hear yourself, to be able to talk out loud to yourself so people don't think you're crazy when you're doing it, and having a lot of hard conversations with myself. Part of the process has been being truthful
Yeah.
with myself, and you can only do that in quiet time,
Yeah.
with nobody going, are you okay? Are you okay? Because your loved ones want to make sure you are okay, but sometimes you need to be by yourself and just let the
Yeah.
ugly out. And that was the biggest thing for me. And now I really am much better at, the funny thing is, I've been living on my own for about 3 years, but isolated away. Like I literally moved out of town from my loved ones.
Hmm.
And I've kind of come back home now, so to speak, in a sense. But it was my son that actually said to me, was okay, Mom, you've been on your own long enough now. It's time to come home
Mm.
to your family. And those years before, I mean, I've only just recently moved closer to home or closer to family. And I've actually started to learn to say, okay, I need some alone time now. I need my space and not feeling guilty for it
Yeah.
and recognizing when you need it. My sister said something to me the other day. She goes, I can finally see the signs when you need that alone time. Because
So I'm going to interrupt you. What are the signs? Because I know people are going to ask because other women are probably going through
Oh,
this.
I get agitated.
Okay. Okay.
And you can hear it in the shift of my body. You can hear it in the shift of my voice, my face, I guess. And I just tend to become really quiet. And I'm a usually very bubbly person. I am full of love to give and spread. Anyone who knows me, I'm a I'm a joker. I'm a in a really weird kiddish way.
Well, that
I
first time
need
I met
love.
you, I was like, what a lovely person. You had so much energy and life to you. And I think when I talked about who was the old Mandy, that's who you are to the core. And now this part of your life, this next chapter is going to be about bringing that woman out, right? Really tapping
Yes.
back into that person because she's still there.
Oh, I believe so. I'm getting a lot more confident in that
Yeah.
as the days go by.
Yeah.
And yeah,
So
I love to laugh.
what is
I
your
love to
self-care routine, Mandy? Like what do you do to when you need that time alone? I get it. Like you're saying, like you know the cues, you know the signs, agitation, maybe alone time, needing to just be in your own thoughts.
quiet.
Quiet.
I
Okay.
myself, their routine is quiet.
Okay.
I can sit and stare outside for hours, going for a walk by myself, put the headphones on, turn some music on, just anything that brings me back to the peace that is inside me. I am really at peace. It's, yes, there's days that I get triggered, but for the most part, I've struggled very hard. I've worked very hard to find that peace inside myself. And that's where I need to go. When I need things to quiet down, when the chaos gets too much, I retreat to close the door, just sit in silence. You know, I love looking at the trees. They're all around me right now. I love seeing the way that the branches move in the wind. I love staring out at the sunset. I love seeing the sunrise and that quiet time, especially first thing in the morning. God, that time is just so precious for
Yeah.
self-care.
And nature is the best place to be when you are healing. You know, whether like you said, it's trees, water, that's the most calming and serene place for you to be so that you can connect with that inner self. So I think you're exactly in the right place. And, you know, something obviously called you to that, the place where you live, where you walk, wherever you're going for your self-care, for your peace, you know, like there's obviously a calling. Do you feel like that this is kind of meant to be? You're in the right place at the right time?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I had actually mentioned to my sister, says the first time I moved into a new place that I didn't wake up going, where am I? It, to me, that was very telling. It's, you know, I'm a strong believer. I always used to be. Faith was always very big for me. I always believed in it. But when I got married, it wasn't to him, and he would ridicule me for it. And eventually I started becoming very silent about it and very, don't talk about it too much or they're going to make fun of me kind of thing. And at some point when life started getting really heavy, then I kind of got angry at faith, and I lost my faith. And faith has come back to me in spades, that
I
now that
love
I've
that.
let it. And it's there for me in so many signs, and so many signs when I look back and
Yeah.
going, wow, Mandy, you didn't pay attention to those things, but they were there. And, you know, every road I took, it was there. I just didn't see it, or I ignored it, or whatever it was. But I am such a firm believer in faith. And it's got me here. Like right now, I'm staring out my window and I'm seeing all these birds flying around, and it's just absolutely
I love that.
shakes me to my core.
Yeah. And you're right, the signs are always there. You have to be mindful to see them, to accept them, and to believe what the signs are and what they're meant for, right? And maybe you had to go through all that to get to this point where you're now, like you're saying, finding that inner peace. I see the signs, I'm going back to my faith. So, you know, it's just amazing because I just feel like you were able to take this courageous step. It wasn't easy, but you did it. And now you are finding yourself and you're really ready for that next chapter. This is super exciting.
I am very excited
Yeah.
for this next chapter. I am.
Amazing. What words of wisdom do you have for our viewers? Anything you want to share?
Believe in yourself. Oh my gosh, when you look at yourself in the mirror and really look in the mirror. God, you're beautiful. Just
Love that.
we are all beautiful. We all have it within us, around us, and you just have to take the time to look for it. You forget it. You get so caught up in life, problems, and all those other things that we forget about ourselves. Yeah. And honestly, the biggest thing that I've learned is that if you don't look after yourself and your needs first, you really are useless to anybody else around you. That's
I agree.
My biggest advice. You've got to look after yourself first and foremost, and everything else will take care of itself.
Yes, lovely.
I just, if we talk about socials, I would love it if people checked out the core movement. I think that they are amazing, and show their support, spread the word. And I just feel that we as a society, as a community, as a South Asian community, that it's really time that we start to really bring our culture and our faith into alignment, because I really think there is a huge disconnect between the two. I don't think our culture practices what our faith teaches. And I think we really need to dig deep within ourselves and try to get that realignment.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful to all women if that was what happened.
Yeah, I agree. And, really support one another. It's a sisterhood. It's a community. I totally agree. And I am a supporter of the core movement as well. Actually, we're doing a podcast soon as well. Yes. So thank you so much for being here. I know it wasn't easy for you. I just want to tell you that I so love the work you're doing. I'm super happy that you are here and taking these steps. I'm so proud of you. You should be proud of yourself, and that's all that matters. You're a courageous, beautiful woman.
Angie. Thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Angie.